Morning, everyone.
Good morning, Rabbi.
We're learning Mishna Yesukah, Perek Dalet, chapter 4, Mishnah Yud, Mishnah 10. Continuing with the discussion of the mitzvah of Nisach HaMayim. K'maaseu b'choil, the same way you perform the mitzvah of Nisach HaMayim during the week, Kach maaseu b'Shabbos, it was performed the same way on Shabbos. Just that. Elo sheyamamale me'erev Shabbos, just that he would fill before Shabbos, Chavis shel zahav, a golden barrel, she'ena mekudeshes, that is not sanctified, mina shiloach, from the shiloach spring, umanicha belishka, and leaves it in a chamber. Okay, so as we had in yesterday's Mishnah, I was learning yesterday, the beginning of the process of Nisach HaMayim was a Kohen would go down to the Shiloach spring, and he took a jug that was golden and filled it with water, and then brought it to the Beis HaMikdash. If it's Shabbos, you're not going to be able to do that. So therefore, they had to get the water from before Shabbos. Mm-hmm. Now, the Mishnah points out that it was a golden barrel that was not sanctified. Now, yesterday, meaning during the week, the Mishnah says that the tzluchis that you it just says you bring a tzluchis, you bring a flask. This flask was a klisharis. It was a sanctified vessel. And when you filled it, when the water was filled in this flask, it became sanctified. And there it was sanctified to be used for pouring on the altar, pouring on the mizbeach. Now, the problem is that if you were to leave over that water, let's say you'd have a sanctified vessel, you filled it up with water, right? You filled it up the day before, and then it stayed overnight, it would become invalidated. That's called lina. Mm-hmm. When something becomes sanctified it becomes sanctified in a klisharis, in a vessel that is sanctified, and it's meant to be used on the mizbeach, such as the water for the nisach hamayim, for the water libation. Once it's sanctified in a consecrated vessel to the Beis HaMikdash, and you leave it overnight before you use it, it becomes invalidated. So if you were to use a chavis, a barrel of gold that was mekudesh, that was sanctified, you'd have that problem. Therefore, the Mishnah specifies that this golden barrel that was used was eina mekudeshes. It was not sanctified. What does it mean it wasn't sanctified? They explain that a unconsecrated vessel is one that had never been used in the performance of a service in the temple. Hasn't been used, never used. Never used, it's not yet consecrated itself. And therefore, the water that goes in it isn't consecrated. So what happens now? You fill it up from Erev Shabbos, you leave it in a chamber, and then when Shabbos morning comes, when you want to pour it, you now take it from that unconsecrated vessel, you'll transfer it into a consecrated vessel because you need to consecrate the water before you pour it, and then you'll pour it. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's what you had. That's the first step of what happened. This is the difference. If it comes out, Nisach HaMayim has to be performed on Shabbos. The filling of the waters have to be done before Shabbos in an unconsecrated vessel. Now, let's say it was Shabbos. You had done all this. You left it in the chamber. Nishpacha, it spilled. Somebody knocked it over. Okay, you can't go get the water now from the shiloach anymore. Oynis galsa. Let's say the water became uncovered.
Yeah.
Uncovered water is also a problem we'll talk about soon. Mm-hmm. So what do you do then? Where are you going to get the water from? The answer is hayamamale min akiyar. Then the water would be drawn from the kiyar. The kiyar was a basin of water that was in the Beis HaMikdash that was there with the Kohanim to wash their hands and feet before they began their service of the day. Before performing any service, in the Beis HaMikdash. They had to wash their hands and feet from the basin. And therefore, in a situation where the water spilled, that's where you get your water from. Get the water from there. That's also sanctified water. Now, the problem though, right? Why don't we say that all the water in the kiyar, right, didn't change the water? The water was connected. It had its source, right? It was in this, and the water was in the basin. It stayed in the basin, and it stayed in the basin overnight, right? Overnight, it wasn't used. Right. So then why wasn't that water considered invalidated for lina, right? It's kiyar is a klishar. It's a consecrated vessel, right? The water therefore becomes consecrated. You want to now use it on the altar, but it stayed overnight. It should have become invalidated, no? The answer is that what we learned this in Yuma, that what they did with the kiyar was the following. Let me just read here from the notes. Although the kiyar itself was a consecrated vessel, water that was left in it overnight did not become disqualified. This is because the kiyar itself was lowered each night into a well. The kiyar was lowered in each night into a well, so that its water merged with the water of the ground, thereby losing its separate identity. Meaning, the thing is that, what had to be, if there's a problem of this water becoming invalidated because of being overnight, that would mean you have to change the water every day. So there was a Kohen Gadol, I believe, in Yuma, who instituted that they actually made this lowering mechanism. They lowered the kiyar into a well. The well was spring water. That means that was water connected to the ground. So what happened was, now by lowering the kiyar into the well, that means now the water in the basin now connects with the water in the well. The water in the well is connected to the ground. It's not considered in a vessel. And the water in the kiyar, although it's in a vessel, by connecting to the water in the ground, becomes one with the groundwater. And it loses its own separate identity. And therefore, it's like the water is physically in the kiyar, right? But it's connected to the ground. Yeah. By being connected to the ground, number one, it loses its previous identity. And it's not going to be it's not consecrated water that it should become nifsal belina by being overnight that way. Now, when you take the water kiyar out of the bear, the water in the kiyar is new water. It's new water. Before it was connected to the ground with the well. Now you separated it. It's new water. It's in a vessel that's consecrated. Now you can use it for the Nisach HaMayim. So there's a concept. This is the concept of hashaka, where the two waters connect together. That actually now they take on a common identity. In this case, what's happening is the water in the basin, the kiyar, when lowered into the well, is taking on the identity of the groundwater. So it's no more considered water of the vessel. It will not become invalidated because it stayed overnight. Now, when you lift it up, you take it out of the bear, you disconnect it, I've got new water. It's consecrated in the vessel. I can go ahead and use it for the Nisach HaMayim. And the Mishnah concludes, now, why did you have to do all this? We said you have to do this if it's spilled. Okay, if it's spilled, I get it, right? But what about if it comes? What's the issue with becoming uncovered? Says the Mishnah. Shayayin v'amayim amagulin. Actually, so okay, because wine or water that become uncovered, pesula l'gabim mizbeach, they're invalidated to use them on the altar. That means wine that you use all year round to pour on the mizbeach. If that wine becomes uncovered, it becomes invalidated. Why? What's the problem with the uncovered water? So uncovered liquids that were not watched are unfit for drinking because a snake may have drunk from them and left its venom behind. That is actually something that nowadays we're not concerned about because we, Baruch Hashem, don't live with all these kinds of venomous snakes around. But in in ancient times, they had that issue. The sages forbade people to drink that water, take the chance and drink the water. Now, if the point is now that if this kind of water you can't drink it, people can't drink it, then it's disqualified from using it on the altar also. Such liquids are therefore disqualified from being offered on the altar because anything unfit to be served to a human king may certainly not be offered to the King of Kings. That's how they bring it down here. So the point is that once it becomes uncovered, people can't drink it. People can't drink it. You can't offer it You can't pour it on the altar, and therefore, if it became uncovered, you're gonna have to get the water from the kiyar, from the basin. Have a wonderful day, and a meaningful fast, and a very happy and freilich and Purim.
Amen.
The keel from